I go to your
We
page.
are live. Awesome. How's it going, guys? Welcome to True TV. We're really excited today because this has been something I've been wanting to do for a little bit and have a guest on, a very good friend actually, regarding publishing your own book, writing your own book. And so, before we get going in all the nitty gritty, please do share. You guys can take some time. Actually, Marty, you can even share
Okay.
wherever, and let's make sure this is getting out because I feel like this is very important to where we are right now. I think there are tons of people out there who have thought about it or dreamt about it or been told they should write their story or stories, but just didn't know where to start. I know you helped me tremendously get going with two of mine, and I know you've helped many, many people that I've sent to you as well. So definitely just wanted to make sure this is something that if it's for me and all these other people, then it's probably a ton of other people who are interested in on all of this too. So without
Yeah.
anything else, yeah, go to swiftfire.org. Please get on the newsletter. Just a few announcements. I have Dr. Lucky on next week. We're going to be sharing about energy medicine, just to give you a little heads up on that. But yeah, Marty, welcome.
Thank
Tell us,
you.
yeah, tell us a little bit about you and who you are and how you got here and how you started your company,
Yeah.
Rebel Queen, which is pretty cool. And let's
Okay.
see where we go.
Okay. Listen, this might be really long now. So I'm Marti Statler. I live in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I just moved here just a little over a year ago. So I'm in a beach town. I love the beach. There is nothing like sticking your toes in the sand and listening to the roar of the water. I have found tremendous solace living here. But I moved here a little over a year ago from Pennsylvania, which is where I was not born but raised. I have three daughters, anywhere between the ages of 19 and 26 years old. I've got grandbaby number 6 on the way. I know, I'm so excited. She didn't even make that public yet, so I don't know if I should. It's totally fine. It's a baby. It's coming either way. Yeah, so let's talk about publishing. Super excited. I sold insurance. I was a door-to-door insurance salesman. I was selling Aflac. It was great. I loved it. I did well at it. But I just got to this point that this was my prayer. Jesus, I'm going to need you to give me some Jesus work to do, and I need you to pay me for it. That was my prayer, verbatim. And I walked into an office building to peddle my insurance one day, and I walked out with a job offer that was at a faith based publishing company. And I said yes to it. And my role at that company was to read unsolicited manuscripts and negotiate contracts. And it was an amazing experience and set off the trajectory of me publishing books now. That was 14 years ago. So I've been doing this for 14 years. Tried to get out of publishing twice. And when I got back to publishing after the second time, I know this sounds really cliche, but that's okay. I'm going to say this anyway. I really believe that I was born to publish books. I truly love what I do. I love working with authors. And I just find great fulfillment in being able to like help get books done and put into the world because books change lives.
I didn't realize I was on mute. So yes, books do change lives,
Yeah.
and I'm an avid reader. I know you are too. I've been known to be reading 5 to 6 books at
Multiple.
once at all times. I'm constantly reading. Tell us, like, how do you even start? Like, what's the starting process? And by the way, I love your story. I think it's just a lot of people are finding themselves when they think it's like a synchronicity, but really it's like a call and like God just ordering steps to get to the place. And I know from experience, just talking to you, everything that you did before that, you're using now
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
different way, but sometimes along the line of doing all the things you think are like, why am I doing this? It's like actually for the thing you're doing next.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's preparation, in some way, shape, or form, it's preparation. And I was just talking about this yesterday when I was on a call with someone, and it's like, I have paid for some very costly lessons. And I have paid dearly, but I have learned from everything that I've done. And what I at one time would have considered like this huge mistake, and maybe different choices could have been made at the time, but I learned so much from those things that positioned me better moving forward. So yeah.
awesome.
Got
So
it.
for the random Joe out there, or I guess that's a boy name. I don't know what a girl Joe.
Jane, random
Yeah,
Jane.
Jane or a Joe out there who wants to write. What is the start process on this?
So all right, so I get a couple different people that communicate with me. One, some people already know exactly what they want to write about, they just need help writing it. And then the other part of that coin are people who are like, I know I have books in me. I know I want to write. I've been told I want to write. I just don't know what to write about. And I love working with people who are not quite sure how to like hone down the message in their book. Um, because it's super fun for me just to help them get a vision around what they want to do. And here's what I would say to them. Listen, let's just assume you're that person that, there are just so many things that you could write about, or you have no idea what you want to write about. And this is where I start everybody when we're brain dumping to get this book out. And that's this. If your life message, if you could communicate one thing from your life to impact somebody else, what would you tell them? Like, what is your biggest life lesson that you want to impart onto somebody else? And it could be something as simple as don't play small. Let's just talk about that. Let's just go from that. Let's just don't play small, right? Just take the risk. And I would say to them, that's absolutely fabulous. So if I'm reading your book and at the end of your book, you want me to take risks and not play small, what is it that I need to know in order to get to that point? Well, Marty, you need to learn to kick fear in the face. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, taking chances, that wouldn't come naturally to you. You need to dip your toe in the water of, hey, maybe I would like to do this, but I don't know how. Well, let's start Googling and see what that looks like, right? So there's certain steps that you can take, real practical steps to get closer to the step of don't play small, right? When you're brain dumping that out, that's essentially becoming your table of contents. So when I start your book, I want you to take me on a journey. So I need to adopt as my own that I need to kick fear in the face. Great. Tell me how to kick fear in the face. What does that look like practically? Well, that looks like recognizing when, and listen, all this is just off the cuff. I don't actually have these answers. But kicking fear in the face, that looks like when you find that you want to do something, but then you start getting nervous and butterflies and you start pulling back, then you need to recognize that and do the exact thing that your body is telling you not to do. I mean, because our bodies protect us, right? So you need to do the exact opposite of what your body is telling you not to do, just to start taking steps forward. So okay, cool, I totally agree with what you're saying. So you're breaking down these steps of what I need to do to get to this part, and then you're breaking those steps down even further, kind of like an outline, that you did in grade school or middle school. You're outlining your work. That's what I want you to do. So what's your message that you want to impart to me? What are the steps that I need to know to adopt that as my own? And then just keep breaking it down more. What's the step? Give me some examples. Give me the how and the why.
That's awesome, and that's exactly what we did. And we're I still have two other projects that I'd like to get with you, and we just haven't got to that point yet. But one of the books that I did was actually a little bit different than what you're saying. Two of them were exactly what you did, but one of them, and I've encouraged people to do this too, is just get up and write whatever's on your heart every single day. Just write one thing. And what ended up is, after doing 21 days or 31 days, I literally was like, this can all be like a chapter each
Yeah.
of just, like a heading of, you know, just very diversified situations, but all spiritual. In this case, it was spiritual reflections of a Montana girl in a Louisiana state. That one ended up being like very like just a synchronicity that happened that day, and another synchronicity that came up, or a dream that I had, and then it got kind of set up with the keto. I already had like a series of 31 days videos, and I was just able to take the videos that I had already created and turn it into a book. So there's all kinds of different things. With the Science of Miracles, that was a little bit of both. It was, I already had some videos where I was teaching some different things, but that one was so crazy because literally I was going to have a ghostwriter do it for me with the videos. But then the more I was working with this person, it was like, it wasn't really my voice. It didn't feel like me. And the more I felt like, oh my gosh, I just need to do this. And I had committed to you to get, a chapter
Yeah.
done a week is what I had said initially. And so I started writing that morning, and I was like, look, I'm not going to overcommit and make a bunch of promises, but I can commit to a chapter a week. And then you had given me this crazy deadline of like, and I was like, nope, nope, that ain't going to work. And then I realized the whole book is about the Science of Miracles. Why am I limiting myself and my own programming that this can't be done that fast? And so I said, okay, I get up in the morning, I start writing. I think it was about 10 o'clock or something. I started writing. And by 4, I had almost the entire book done.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe this just all came out. And then I continued to write all the way till 11 and finished. And then I think we may have added like 2 more chapters in like way later, just for like something came up. But I mean, that book was done in a day. So
Yeah.
was Keep the Third Heaven. That was done in a day. So it's very interesting, how once you get in the flow, you
Yeah.
think you're not. But once you get in that flow, as long as there's not a bunch of distraction, which
Yep.
is a good key too, is like get away, set the time
Yep.
apart, make sure you're not distracted, and see what comes out. Sometimes it's just doing it and just starting. Any thoughts to that?
Well, and I think too that when you create the space for something, like it gets filled. If you are not in the habit of writing, sit down and just start writing. Make it a habit every day and it will get easier. I've noticed that on my own, like with social media. If I get out of the habit, if I get too busy to like make time to write, like create posts for my social media, when I do sit down to do it, it's like I have to get over that hump of I don't know what to write about. But I have found that if I create that space on a regular basis, my writing comes easier. I'm inspired in like the randomness of ways that, I'm being inspired to write, because I'm creating space for it.
I agree. I agree. And I will tell you this too. I know you're in Alabama. Are you by the water by any chance?
I
You said
am.
it's a beach town. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Something, well, scientifically proven that when you are near water, and or can hear water or be in the water even for 30 seconds,
Yeah.
your brain waves go into theta, which is total creation. So that's why you always hear people who like, go out, to get away to write, like, or lock themselves up to write, is not only the distraction, but sometimes it's just the energy of the woods or the nature or the water that literally shifts your brain into creativity. And I found that out by accident because I was studying like, theta, delta, all of that. And I had went to the beach, and I had told myself, I'm not going to work at all. Like, this is just going to be rest, fun, sleeping in, whatever. But when I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm flooded with these ideas. And it was like, just let me do this quick video. I told my husband, just, and then it was like, let me do this other quick video. And then I was like, let me write this down. And it was just, it's easier for me to do a video than to write, just because
Yeah.
I get on my letters backwards and all that stuff. And as many of you have seen my posts, they're pretty hard to understand at times because I can't even read it. This is the way I see it. And it's been a thing. So sometimes it's just like easier to write. But what are your thoughts on any of that?
Okay, well, listen, I had no idea about that, but it makes sense because every time, and I say this, I go on vacation, I always get way more work done. In fact, Rebel, I'll never like Rebel. All right, so let me tell this story. I've been in publishing for a really long time. I founded Rebel in 2019, and it was amazing because up until that point, till I founded Rebel, truly, I believed that I was not good enough to do a business on my own. Truly believe that. What switched in me was that I had a coach at the time who looked at me like I had three freaking heads, and she's like, "You can totally do this on your own," and I believed her. But when Rebel was birthed, I had taken my daughter for her 16th birthday to Myrtle Beach. And I tell people I always get way more work done when I'm on vacation, which is true because most of my vacations are happening at the beach. And I love to just sit beside the ocean and read a book. And I remember I was reading at Myrtle Beach with my daughter and her friend, and Rebel, the entire business plan was just downloaded. This is how you're going to do things. This is what it looks like. Yeah. So, and I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, and I get in the shower. Most of my best ideas come from the shower.
Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody says that too. Like they hear God in the shower, they get their ideas in the shower because you're alone, you're in water. There's something even to the sound of the shower.
Mm-hmm.
I always suggest like going to bed. I go to bed with the sound of like lightning and the ocean and rain. You can find like a 10-hour or an 8-hour, no commercial black screen. So I put it on the TV and that's what we listen to when we go to sleep because that's way better than the commercials that could be programming. Like why not programming really open up for God to really speak versus being programmed with something that is not going to serve you. So
That's
it's really interesting. Awesome. So what's the next step after you get your table of contents and your actual passionate idea that you want to bring through? What do you do after that?
Okay. Well, first off, I am just going to throw this out there that if you go to my website and it's rebelqueen.co, there's a pop-up that's going to say, hey, do you want a writing guide? Essentially. So get that and it will download, you can download that and I walk you through all of this in this guide. But after you get those steps down, like that message you want me to get, here's the steps that I need you to know in order to get there. Then you're going to break that down just in outline form. So practically speaking, I tell people when you start writing, I need you to dedicate like whatever time it's going to be. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, but get it in your calendar so you have dedicated time. So you start creating that habit and opening up the space for creativity. Listen, if you are writing a nonfiction book, I don't actually believe in writer's block. And here's why, especially if you're writing a nonfiction book. If you are writing nonfiction, you're writing what you know. This stuff is coming from inside you. If you're writing a memoir, your story, whatever that is, if you are writing what you know, it's going to flow from within you. And if you are getting stumped, it is because of a couple different things. One, you have an expectation of what it should be, and you don't feel like you're reaching that, which that's just total crap. Just ignore that and just keep writing. Or you're going back and you're trying to edit. So absolutely don't edit yourself while you're writing because an author's work is never done. You can get your book done and you can go back and read it 17 more times. And every single time, I should have said this. I could have worded this differently. Why did I put that in there? Oh, there's a better word than that. So you're going to edit it every single time you go back. So just don't go back. So when you're getting that first draft out, it's just a draft. You just need to flush it out of your system and get it onto paper, right? So just write what you know. But I tell people two things. One, when you're writing that first draft, stick to the facts. When you are writing that, two things are going to happen. So you're going to need like two separate pieces of paper or notebooks or whatever. One, you're going to keep writing these facts and you're going to think of stories that you can add in. It is not time to fold those stories in. So, what I want you to do is write down on one of those pieces of paper or that notebook that story. Like, detail it enough that you know what you're talking about when you go back to read that. I am queen of jotting something down and going back and, like, I have no idea what I was talking about. I have no idea. So, write enough details that you know what you're talking about when you go back to it. Um, that second piece of paper you're going to keep is for all of those distractions that are going to pop up, like, shit, did I feed the dog? Oh gosh, I forgot to send that email. My laundry, I got to get my laundry done, or the dishes need done. Listen, yes, you have to do all of those things, but not right now. So just write them down on paper, because when you're writing down on paper, you're not going to forget about it because it's on paper, and it's getting it off the hamster wheel in your head, and it's getting it out of your head onto paper. So we just need to get it off the hamster wheel. So flush through the first draft, outline those things out, stick to the facts when you're writing out your first draft. Keep 2 notebooks, one for the stories that you're going to remember that you're going to fold back in that second time you go through your book, and the other one's for your to-do list when you're done writing.
That is really good. Really good stuff. And I know you're going to give me a link too, which I'm going to be posting this link for anyone who is interested in starting this process. Please do grab my link, which I'll be posting here in a little bit, or maybe Marty can post it for me. But yeah, that would be a good way just to start the basics. I mean, just to get the information and figure out, like, the big thing is starting.
Just starting.
I think that a lot of times we create our own fears, our own blocks, our own, limited beliefs.
Yeah.
Feeling like, oh no, not me. That's for those people, or whatever. But I mean, I've written music and for years, and I even had stuff on the radio. But for some reason, to get a crossover to the book thing was a little bit fearful for me. I knew I was going to do it, but I just I don't know. Even though I had success in writing in another venue, it just wasn't, but once I just sat down, I was like, you know what, this is not as crazy bad as I kind of like made it out to be in my mind. And there's something so crazy about like the cover, and like once you are holding it, it just starts to become like super real when you have like the cover in your hand and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I did that. Like
Yep.
it's literally a birthing process. Like just you feel like you just birthed this baby. And speak about that, because I know you help with the cover, you help with design, you help with editing. I mean, you kind of all are on you're definitely like a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
So go into that.
So, all right, in that transition from getting your book written to now getting, because there's 3 parts to getting a book done, right? You got to write it, you publish it, and then you market it. You have to sell it, right? You didn't write a book I mean, maybe you did. Maybe you write a book just to say you wrote a book. You don't care if you sell anything, and that's totally fine too. But from that process of writing to publishing, just a couple things. Like, I just want to appease maybe some nerves, because I have heard this so frequently. I am not a writer, and that's totally fine. You might not think that you're a writer, but you are an author. So I have people who are really gifted, talented speakers who do really well communicating verbally, and they are terrible writers. You should see some of the stuff that I got, and it's totally fine, because as long as I can capture the heart of what you're doing and why we're doing this, I can take the words that you've given me and we can make a really great product out of that. So one, you don't have to be a really great writer. You don't have to write a draft that is publishing ready. The reason is because you have to understand like where your skill set and where your giftings end, because that's where someone else can pick it up. So we have writers and editors on staff, like that is their skill set and that is their gifting. So they're going to take what you can do when you're ready and say, okay, I'm done. And just recognize when you are done and you've taken this as far as you can take it, and you're ready to pass it off to the next step, which would be publishing. So when you're publishing a book, there's a lot of things that happen. with a lot of people with different skill sets. Now, listen, I know that there are some really talented people out there whose skill set is vast. Um, I feel like I have like a very wide skill set, but I hone in and I know what I'm good at. The other things like I can make happen, but I'm not super great at it. Um, so when it comes to publishing, there's a couple different things that are happening, like a bunch of resources that need to be pulled in. So you have editors, and you usually have two separate editors. You have a content development editor, which is the first person who's going to take hold of your book, right? They're looking at it, they're making sure it's a well-rounded book. Do we have all of the information in here that we need? Is it readable? Does it flow well? Is it structured well? Do we have enough stories? Is it impactful? So you want someone to go through and just make sure that all of the pieces are in there that's going to make this book, and it's all in there in a way that makes sense. The second editor that you're going to need, and listen, there's a lot of terms that are used interchangeably. So like line edit or copy edit. That editor is going to be someone that once the book is fully flushed through, they're going back and fine tuning it, making sure that grammar is correct, spellings are correct, I's are dotted, T's are crossed. They're just like fine tuning everything. Once you've got both of those edits complete, the next step in that process is someone in layout. And terminology wise, it's a formatter, a layout person. For years, I called it pagination. What that person is doing is they're taking that Word document, and by the time you get it back, you're looking at a PDF that is your book. So it's going to have all of the front matter in there, the back matter, your chapter headings, your table of contents, your page numbers. All of that's going to be in there. And listen, every single time someone touches your book, you're going to want to touch your book again, right? You're going to want to make sure, what did you do to my material? Do I agree with what you did in my material? Because some people get super concerned that, their voice, I mean, you touched on this briefly at the beginning, like their voice is going to change in the book, because it's super important to maintain the integrity of the author and what the author is saying in the way that the author is saying it within the book. So every time someone else touches your book, I encourage you to read it. I don't just encourage you, I'm telling you, read your book and make sure that everything's there, and you're tracking and you're agreeing with everything. When the layout person comes back, and listen, by the time this whole process is done, you're going to read your book like 25 times. By the time that layout comes back and you have that PDF, you're going to read through it. Layout people aren't reading your book. They're technical, right? They're looking at words as words. They're not reading it. So there's going to be some mistakes in there. So you're going to need to go through that with a fine tooth comb again, just to make sure, hey, is spacing okay? This word is hyphenated from line to line. Is the hyphen in the right spot? Do the footnotes match where they are within that page? So you're just going to need to go through that. So secondary, like that's the interior file. Once all that proofing's done, your interior file is going to be considered complete. Secondary to that is your cover file. So that's also a separate person, like a cover designer, and is going to take the vision of your cover and bring it to life. And listen, there's a couple things with this, and this is what I'm going to tell, whoever is wanting to write a book, who's like just jotting notes down with this. I want you to go to Amazon and I want you to find books who are in your same niche, similar books. I hate competitors because, there's room out here for all of us, right? You can go to any bookshelf. This is actually really important too, because a lot of people I have heard say, but there are already so many books written on that subject. Yes, absolutely. And I buy all of them. Like I will go, like my library sitting right here, kind of falls into a handful of categories. You're going to find business books. You're going to find self-help books. You're going to find money books, leadership books, faith-based books, and cocktail books. That's in my library. And I don't just buy one book. I buy a lot because I want to know what everybody has to say. And when you're doing this, like, yes, of course, there are similar themes that I'm getting so distracted by these people. I just want to say, hey, how are you doing? Hey, Mary.
Hey, Sorry.
No, it's
Hey,
okay.
everybody.
Squirrel, part squirrel. I mean, in these books that are in similar categories, like they're gonna say some of the same things, but they're gonna say it a different way. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm not gaining something from every single author that I'm reading. And really, when you're reading, read critically, take what's meant for you, and like just ignore the stuff that doesn't resonate with you. And that's just with every book. But when you're going to Amazon and you're finding books that are in your hey Candace, I love you. Um, but when you're finding books in your similar niche, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down to the rankings that are on Amazon, and I want you to go to like the bestsellers in that category, like the top, right? And I want you to take notice to a few things. I want you to take notice to the categories that they're listed under. That's important. I want you to take notice to the covers that are selling really well. And I want you to take notice to how they are communicating their book. And then this is gold. Guys, I'm dropping you a gold nugget here. I want you to go to their reviews. I want you to go to the 5-star reviews and I want you to read them. Don't read all of them. Some of them have thousands, but go to 5-star reviews and see what everybody loved about that particular book. And if they loved the stories, make sure you add stories. If they loved tools and resources, make sure you add tools and resources. And then I want you to go to the 1-star reviews and see what people did not like about that particular book. And then I want you to fill that gap. So, did they not like that there was no stories? Make sure you're adding stories. Did they not like that there wasn't anywhere for them to go? Then whatever, right? You are going to find gold in those 1 and 5-star reviews to make sure like you're hitting that material in your book. It makes your book a better book.
Yeah, I don't think I ever did that, but that's a really good point. And then and testimonies too, like or depending on what the situation is.
Mhm.
And those reviews really matter too,
Yes.
believe it or not. It's very, very important not only to read them and see what's going on with those, but also to get your own once you're out there.
Mhm.
Because people tend to look at all of that now, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant. Especially I'm seeing these new generation people immediately. If I say anything to my kids about, well, you want to go eat so and so, they've already looked. If I want to go to wherever
Mhm.
or do whatever, they're like, oh yeah, it only has 2 stars. And I was just like, I never even thought to look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying about multiple people on one subject, I
Yeah.
probably have like 15 books on oils, of course, and then like 15 books on crystals and, you know, um, spiritual consciousness or whatever. So you're absolutely right. Just
Mhm.
because it's along the same lines, it's not going to have your vibe. It's not going to have your frequency. It's not going to have your experience because we're all so very, very different. I know Steve is on here, and I mean, he does sound healing and crystal bowls.
Mm.
Gosh, he's recommended several books to me too. But I guarantee, Steve, if you wrote a book, dude, I'm going to buy that book. And because the way the essence of you is coming through, that's
Yeah.
absolutely his DNA. That's very, very separate from everybody else. And that's the beauty of how God made us so diversified is we all have a part. Everyone has a piece.
Yeah.
And you never know what piece that's going to come through to help you get that whole big picture, to help you really, really understand things in a better way. And I'm old school. I'm still like the real book paper, like write it. I still have a real calendar that I write down. I underline. I like to smell it.
Mhm.
I dog ear. I highlight.
Yes.
I'm still. I know you do digital and you
Mhm.
do audio.
Absolutely.
You helped me launch my book all on Kindle. You helped me launch it, or both of my books on Kindle, and you helped me do the audio. I got in the studio. I was like, again, another thing out of my comfort zone, but so many people are going the audio route. And you know what, my audio book is a lot different actually than
Absolutely.
my written book. Not just because it's me talking and it's my voice, but I get emotional at times. I kind of went off
Yeah.
the map at times and added my own, things that came up in memory as I was going, and I just went with it, and I was going to edit it out, and then you told me no, keep it, keep it. And so speak a little bit about, print versus audio versus digital, speaking into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple formats. Great job, Steve. If you need help, let me know. There is lots of formats that you can consume a book in, right? Like you have your paperback or hardcover book. You have your ebooks, you have audiobooks. There are, geez, there's large print, there's translated books, and I feel like it's important to do all of those. So I automatically, when I'm working with books, I automatically am doing ebooks, paperbacks, and I'm now doing hardcovers as well. Like I'm just doing it as a standard. Because some people like hardcovers, right? Like I like hardcovers. So I'm automatically doing that as a standard. And I'm encouraging all of my people to do audiobooks. Now, listen, there's a couple things here. One, I much prefer that if I'm going to listen to an audiobook, I want the author to be narrating their audiobook. I mean, you are a prime example, Sharnael, like your emotion that goes into it, like the inflection in your voice, like it hits differently if I'm hearing you read your book to me and ad-libbing, where it comes naturally.
That's it, ad-libbing. And I was
Yes.
gonna, like I said, I even called you and I'm like, shoot, I have a few chapters that I kind of like remember some things and blah blah blah. And you're like, so what? Make it different. It's
Yeah.
fine. And I was nervous to tell you. I was like, oh, she's gonna be mad. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, I know. And if you think about it this way, it's like we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have TikTok, we've got email newsletters. And listen, if we just copied and paste verbatim into every single outlet, I mean, why would anybody want to go get my email newsletter if I'm just copying and pasting what's already on my Facebook that you just read, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I love the fact that you ad-libbed in your audiobook. I mean, because real talk, it gives your readers an opportunity to like hear more of you and buy more products from you. I mean, because they're getting more in another product. So it just makes sense for that. And I don't remember what the statistic is, Sharnael. I think I had told you at one time, but it's like 60, 70, 80%. I don't remember. But audiobook sales have increased year over year, like
Really?
super high. Yes. Like super high. It's crazy. I don't remember what the statistic is. I need to look that up again. But yeah, I mean, it just makes sense to do an audiobook. So I encourage my authors, hey, one, look for a local recording studio. Most people don't know where to start to look for a local recording studio. Well, here's a couple ideas. Google recording studio. Charlotte, just reach out. I'll help you. I'll give you the next steps on that. And we'll drop that link then later. So Google recording studio, see if you can find something close by. Call your local radio station if you have a local radio station. Podcasters, see if you have any local podcasters because they have studio places set up. Churches could absolutely have like little studios set up that you can record your podcast. And then what I would do is I provide like these are the files that I need. So whoever's going to be recording you, so you're in your little microphone doing your thing, whoever it is that's recording you and providing you the files, I'm going to give them the instructions on what I need from them. And once they are done with those instructions, and they have the files ready, then I just interface directly with the recording studio guru. Actually, I don't even know if they have like a technical name, so I'm sorry if I offended anybody. So I'm going to get to that recording studio guru. I'm going to get their files, and then I'm going to make everything happen on my end by making sure it's all uploaded properly. And yeah, go from there.
Yes, and it looks like there are a ton of people on here. Charlotte is writing a children's book, and Steve's already writing. I know Candace is supposed to be writing a book. Debbie's on here. If any of you guys have, yeah, I was going to say producer. Steve's a recording engineer. If any of you guys have questions too while you're on here, feel free to just post it in the chat.
Oh, yes. I love answering questions.
You can directly send your questions here. So what would you say to someone who is ready to start now. Like, I mean, obviously they got to send you a link and get going.
Mhm.
But what is, well, I guess you're going to talk about cost a little bit too, because I'm going to say this. I was connected to, I'm not going to name the names of some pretty big publishing companies that had offered me 3 book deals over the years. And this is weird, years and years and years ago when I first wrote Keys to Third Heaven. And at the time, I was working a lot with Graham Cook, John Paul Jackson, Paul Keith Davis, and some of those guys who had multiple books out, Stacey Campbell, and they were all going with these publishers. And literally, I had 5 or 6 when I was on TV. Well, who were like, please, even 1 book deal, 3 book deal. When I started looking at the print of the actual take home for me, not only did I have to put up a bunch of money up front, but in the end, they were doing my marketing and what have you and putting the book together. But I was getting 3% of the actual cost of the book in the end. So just like, I mean, I'm talking pennies. So if it was a $15 book, I might come home with, 3 cents a book or something. And that didn't sit well with me. This is like my life in my first book. And I'm sitting here going, why am I going to do all of this and I'm getting pennies? And like, of course they're going to put it out there and do the marketing and what have you. But I already had a following with my website and with the travel, the conferences that I was doing, being on TV and what have you. So I kept like really, really praying about it. And I got this scripture that said something about what the good news, don't remind me, the good news, feet, having to do with feet and the good news. Tell me. Beautiful are the feet who
I'm
bring good news.
like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
How beautiful are the feet of people who bring good news. That kept coming in my head, and I was like, "What?" So I look in the Strongs, and it actually wasn't good. It wasn't. The word was publish in the Strongs. How beautiful are the feet who publish good news. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I'm supposed to be the publisher." And of course there's some costs in hiring an editor and paper, buying the paper, getting it printed, which I'm going to go into a second too. But in the end, when I sold a book, I was getting like 95% of the book back in
Yes.
cost of whatever the sale price was, and then also could sell to bookstores and whatever, and so wholesale. But I was still getting 70% of that. So, and I know like Amazon has theirs and whatever, and you can even work with Amazon and they'll print it for you too. So you're not even paying printing costs for, say, of like going find a warehouse, buying 10,000 books that got to sit in your garage and you got to, dupe them out with that upfront cost. So go into a little bit about, oh, well, now I'll say when I brought this to Graham Cook and I said, I'm really considering self-publishing. I talked to Jim Gall, Stacey Campbell, and Graham, and said, I'm actually thinking about self-publishing because why would I waste it? I thought about like the guy who had the talents and
Yeah.
it's like, he wasted his talents and like, why would I just give this away to everyone else when the kingdom, like keep the money and use it to serve and help people and what have you. And they laughed. They were just like, oh no, you really need to go with some kind of marketing person, someone who knows what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. And it was so weird because even like 4 years later, what had happened is the publisher for Graham Cook had decided to stop selling this series he had. He had like, I think a 5 or 10 book series, and they just decided to stop selling it. And he couldn't sell it himself except for the copies that he had bought. And so this book was going nowhere. And he was explaining to me how not only that happened, but I've also talked to several people who went with publishers. Well, they own it. So not only can they own it and own the rights, and they can change your words without telling you, they can cut it out without telling you, or they can stop selling it and not even tell you. And then you're not getting even the 3% or the 1% that whatever you decided on.
Yeah.
So, so the freedom of publishing yourself or working with someone like you, to help publish. You don't own anything. You don't,
Yep.
hijack everybody's stuff. You don't hold it hostage. Go into that a little bit.
Okay, good. I'm actually glad that you asked this question because I've got the tea, and this is what you need to know when you are determining how you are specifically going to get your book out of your head into paper as a book distributed to the masses. Listen, last year and every year, there's 1.5 million books being published in the US every single year. Technology has made everybody a publisher, okay? Anybody can do a book now. So when I'm talking to people, listen, there's room for all of us. Anybody who wants to publish a book, like all of us who are publishing and helping other people publish, there's room for everybody, even though it is still very much can be a cutthroat industry. When you are publishing and you are determining how you're going to publish, listen, there is a lot of people who are like, I want a book deal. Everybody has this in the back of their head that they need to be paid for their book in order for it to be considered like truly published. I was published. Oh, did someone pay you to do that? So let's talk about that. Yes, back in the day, we had traditional publishing companies, and that's how you got your book published. I wrote a book, I pitched it to a publishing company. They found value in it or they didn't. They decided if they could make money on it or they couldn't. They paid you for the manuscript and then they did their thing. That's no longer the case because we're no longer buying our books strictly from bookstores, right? Like Amazon is huge. I buy most of my books from Amazon. You probably do too. Amazon is huge. Because of technology, all kinds of publishing companies have popped up. Okay, so here's what I'm getting at. You need to determine what's important to you before you determine how you're going to publish that. And there's three things that I talk to people about when it comes to publishing. One, you need to know like where you stand with the rights of your book. Okay. Now, your book is copyrighted in your name because you wrote the book, and I don't care who you publish with, right? It's always going to be copyrighted in your name. You're going to open up copyright page, copyright Sharnael, and that's yours. When you are signing a contract, you absolutely need to read the fine print, because what publishing companies do, I mean, because listen, they're putting money into your book, their money into your book. So they need to make sure that they're recouping their funds. I mean, no publishing company stays in business because they weren't making money off of your material. So the fine print, you are signing over the intellectual property rights of your book. What that means is if you wrote a book and you're like, man, this is doing really well, I'm getting a lot of feedback on chapter 3. I think I'm going to take chapter 3 and expand on it and make it its own book. Guess what? You already signed over the rights to that chapter to your publishing company. So you need to go back to your publishing company and say, hey, I want to expand on chapter 3 and make it its own book. They're going to do a couple things. One, they're going to check the sales. Oh, this did really well. Great idea. We're going to go ahead and publish that for you. So now you're in the hamster wheel all over again. Two, they're going to say, sales aren't so good. You know, we're going to sell you your rights back to your book so you can go ahead and do that, because that's a way for them to get money to give you your book back, which that's what would have happened with Graham Cook. Like, they backlisted his stuff. They own the rights to his books. So if he wanted those books, he could offer to purchase them back from them. That can be quite expensive. So you need to know what's important. Is it important for you to have the rights and full control over your book and do whatever you want with it whenever you want? I mean, like, to me, that's kind of important. Unless maybe they were giving me like 7 figures or 6 figures for my book, then I might have to reconsider. I don't know. I mean, just real talk. So they're not going to explicitly say in there, hey, you're signing over the intellectual property rights from your book. But here are some things that you are going to be able to pick up on that's like, oh, they're taking my rights. They're going to say, like, we have translation rights that we can do this in Spanish. We are keeping and maintaining foreign rights, movie rights. I say swag. I don't actually know if that's the right word, but if there's any coffee mugs or t-shirts or hats or calendars to be made, we're going to go ahead and take care of those. Those are real good indicators that they are taking intellectual property rights of your book. And another indicator of that would be just, like royalties, right? So where do you fall in that? If you don't care if someone holds the rights, absolutely, you can seek out a traditional based publishing company, read your contract. The second thing that you need to be aware of is your royalties. Like, how much money per book do you want to make? I mean, Sharnael, you said it perfectly. Like, when I published, traditionally, I was making 3% of my book versus if you publish on your own and put it up on your own platforms, you're making pennies on the dollar publishing traditionally versus making like most of your dollars back. So let me give you just like a quick analogy. I'm terrible with math. That's why I have a calculator. So bear with me on this. Let's just assume your book is a $20 book, right? The average book that I purchase is $20. So I'm spending $20 on a book that, by the way, is costing maybe $2.50 or $3 to print. So $17 is absolutely going to come back to you if you're publishing it on your own, versus if you were getting like royalties from that person, it's sale price. And by the way, bookstores purchase for 50% of the retail price. So now we're not working on that $20 book. We're working on a $10 book that your royalties are going to come out of, minus print costs, minus shipping costs, minus overhead costs, minus all of the costs that got in. That's why you're getting the pennies on the dollars. Okay. So anytime that you can write a book and sell your book from your hand directly into the hands of your reader, or mail it to them, you're always going to get a biggest chunk of the profit, right? I mean, even with Amazon, you're going to upload it on Amazon. So it's like sale price minus, or retail price minus print cost minus shipping, and then, Amazon's royalty split. So you need to understand, where do you fall in rights? You need to know about where you're going to stand for your royalties. And then the other thing is marketing. I want to talk about this a little bit. Every single person who's published a book is like, how can I market my book better? What ideas do you have for me? I don't care who you publish with. The author is always, always, always going to be the biggest marketer of your book, because no one is going to be as passionate about the material as you are, right? And there's ways that you can market your book. And I tell people, it is never, ever, ever too soon to start talking about your book. Like, so for anybody who's like listening to this right now, if you've got that book in your heart, if like something is stirring in you, you can go to freaking Facebook right now and post, listening to this podcast on True TV with Dr. Sharnael Wolverton, Sihan, and I'm listening to Marti Statler with Rebel Queen talk about, publishing books. And this is the book that I've been thinking about. What do you think? Okay, because here's what's going to happen. The sooner you can start talking about your book, the longer the buzz is going to be buzzing, and the more people that's going to jump into that buzz, right? Which is more people who is ready and waiting for you to purchase your book as soon as your book is released. I find that authors who promote, I'm not even going to use the word promote. That's a terrible word. People get scared by promote. But the authors who are transparent and communicating that they're writing a book, what they're writing about, and they're taking people along their journey with them, they're being super vulnerable, because it is a scary thing to say, I'm writing a book. The people who are doing that sooner versus waiting for 4 weeks before the book is released is always going to sell more books upon release than the people who are like, oh, my book's coming out in 2 weeks. Like, now it's really real. And that's fine. Like, if it just does not become real and you just can't do it, that's fine. That's fine. Because you can still do it, but it is never too soon to start promoting your book. And that's the thing. People who are getting traditional book deals have already built an audience. So you need to build your audience. I don't care how you're publishing, who you're publishing with. Build your audience. Build your audience by communicating and staying connected with the people that you are communicating with, right? When a traditional book publisher, like when I started at the first publishing company that I started at, and it was a traditional based deal. So like, we negotiated contracts, we paid royalties, we stocked bookstore shelves. When I read your manuscript and I felt there was like, wow, we've got something here. The next question that I had for you was, hey, I read your manuscript, looks really good. I need you to fill this out for me. And I sent them these forms. And essentially, here's what I wanted to know. Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And how many people love that you're doing it? So how many followers do you have on all of your social media accounts? How engaged are you? How many people are on your email list? How frequently are you engaging with them? Where have you spoken? So I want you to give me the dates and the places that you have spoken for the last 3 years, and how many people was there. And if you have other products, how much did you sell? And then I wanted to know over the next 3 years, how many conferences are you already lined up to speak at, right? And how many people do you anticipate being there? Because that tells me two things. That tells me that you have the bigger the audience, the more books you're going to sell. So the greater chance, the less risk I have taking a chance on doing your book, right? So build your audience. I'm going to sell to them or you're going to sell to them. And I highly encourage you to sell to them. So yeah, now I've rattled on about those three things. You might have to rein me back in on what you need to know next. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is golden. I mean, honestly, and we're coming up at the top of the hour, so we're actually about ending it. But I know if you could, please do send me that link or post it right in the chat here because
I
I
don't
look.
know. Oh, there's the chat. Okay, so listen, you're just going to go to my page, rebelqueen.co.
Well,
Um,
the do you have a link for me? Didn't you have a link?
yes, so here's what that looks like. You're going to go to rebelqueen.co and you're going to book a clarity call. So it's like on every single page. And when you fill out that form, there's going to be a drop down that says, how did you hear about me? And you're going to do that drop down and you're going to select Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sihon. So then that's you.
Yeah, so the reason why I was asking is, I personally would like to know who is doing this. I'm a big person about cheerleading
Yeah,
and prayer,
absolutely.
and I love all of you guys. I'm really excited. I'm actually gonna copy this link right here and put it in the chat. Let's see.
Oh, did you find it?
There we go.
You're the best.
Is it CO
Yeah,
or
it's CO. I
okay?
mean, because some Italian company who's doing clothing took rebelqueen.com.
Where did you get Rebel Queen?
Okay, listen. It kind of started off as a joke. Like I had this LLC that I wasn't even going to use publicly for anything. And then I decided that I was going to start a publishing company, and naming something is a big deal, right? So I'm just like, well, Rebel Queen is like really, I mean, like it's totally me. And here's why. I have three daughters. And when my daughters were teenagers, they'd bring all their little friends into my house and they'd give out my like internet and cable password. So these kids could like plug in my login and they could have access to cable and internet. It didn't matter where they are. And I get so angry with my girls. I'm like, stop giving her stuff out. So I would constantly go in and delete everybody off and change the password. So the last time I was like, well, if their little friends are going to put my password in, they're going to call me Queen. So like my password was some rendition of Queen Marti. So that's where the Queen came from. It was totally a joke. And then Rebel is just because, I mean, it is so innately who I am. Just can't help it. So Rebel Queen. And I want everybody to be a rebel because when I look at rebel, like, I encourage rebellious behavior, like break out of that box that you think you're stuck in.
Interesting. Yeah, I have my own version of why I think that's amazing. And of course, I think you're amazing and I love your work. And you've definitely launched and helped me get both my books, which I have two. You did two of my books. And the last question that someone is asking about, like, not just graphics and cover.
Yeah.
But any kind, I think she came back. Let me see. She said something about illustrations. I know for me, you helped me get this, like I kind of gave you what I had in my mind because I'm not a drawer, as there are illustrations in this book. And you could see that the ones that I've tried to do or did on my own.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. I remember getting those.
Yeah, like stick people.
They're great.
Yes, I'm quite the artist.
Yes.
Whenever I got my cover, because deciding is not my best, and so I remember like putting it out like a few different covers and say which one do you think is better, and I got you guys' help out there in social media land to kind of help, not just me pick, but we had like a contest of things. But talk about illustrations, and then we'll have to wrap up. But this has just been so amazing and just really, really helpful. And
Okay, cool. I'm like, now I feel like I need to talk really fast. So if I don't get something out, just go book a call with me and we'll just have this convo. Okay. So, illustrations, if you specifically are doing a children's book, and you are an illustrator, there are some things that you need to know before you actually start drawing your own children's books, right? If you are not doing your own children's books, there are illustrators out there. Before you do it yourself or you book somebody, you need to know a few things. You need to have your children's book completely edited by a specific children's book editor. You cannot just go hire any editor thinking that they can do a children's book. There are people who are specialized in subject matter and genres. Okay. So you need to have it fully edited. The reason it needs to be edited because we need to know where those page breaks are. So when it gets edited, then we say, okay, page break. This is page 1. This is page 2. This is page 17, whatever. And that children's editor is also going to tell you, hey, it is my suggestion that this is a full spread. So when you're opening up a book, right? Like, hold on, I got a notebook here. So when you're opening up, a book, like this is a spread. Both pages are a spread. If it's just one, that's just one page, right? So some children's books have a full spread and some of them are just individual images on a page. So you need to have it edited. It needs to be broken down by page. And then this is super important. You need to know your trim size. So go look at children's books. Do you like 8.5 by 8.5 square? Do you want 8.5 by 11? Do you want a 7 by 10 book? And by the way, when we upload, also do your research, or you can just call me because I got the goods. Do your research on what is normal trim sizes that are available on these print on demand machines that Amazon is using, because they don't print just any size. So that's super important to know. And there was one other thing that I was going to tell you. Oh, that was the same question. So illustrations, if you pay your illustrator, those illustrations belong to you. And they also need to be the same size. So that illustrator has to be familiar with children's books to understand what bleed that they need, what margins they're looking for, the gutter of your book. The gutter is important because the gutter is in the binding, right? So when you open up your book, that margin that's needed for like the inside of that book, that's a gutter that needs to be bigger, because when you open up a book, it's not going to open up flat.
Right here.
Yes, exactly. That's the gutter. So your illustrator needs to be aware of all of those things, and they need to know what image is going on each page. And they also need to know the trim size of the book so they can draw properly and give you the images that you need. Yes.
And then even writing
yes
this on the side, how thick is it going to be? What are we going to put? Like all of mine have the same like logo at the bottom. So if they're standing next to each other, they match at the bottom. There's just so much. It's fun. It's creative.
So much.
You really want to get your like creative juices going. This is super fun. So if you guys are interested, go to our link, rebelqueen.co, and, check out what she's doing. I think this is, very timely. Apparently, lots of people are commenting saying how timely it is. Any further questions, I guess they can reach out to you and kind of hone in on any specifics that may be more personal to their situation, more customized. Any final words before we pop off here?
No, I'm so excited. This has been super fun. It flowed really well. I love seeing all these comments come in. I love talking about books. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. And definitely go to our newsletter, get on our newsletter so you get all of the upcoming shows. Make sure there's some great products on there, resources on my classes. And hit the notification on here. I forgot to mention that we do have a membership that helps us keep going. It's $4.99 a month for you to be able to get all of this. And we do have private meetings. We have private content that you can't get right here. Our meetings are Zooms. So we're actually seeing each other's faces, hearing your stories. It's a more of a conversation versus like right here, you're just seeing two people for an interview. Our meetings are very fun because we're doing fun things like burn parties, and we do destiny readings. There's just a lot of fun of getting to know each other, because I can see you guys as names and that's fun, but I really miss seeing people in real life. And obviously we aren't going to be connecting in real life, but the closest thing would be on a Zoom to actually, just see and hear your hearts, and answer Q&As, and really get to know each other on a community and work together as a community. So we have a meeting in February. We have one every month. And then I'll also do free giveaways for my members. And we will be giving away a free bioscan and consultation valued at $222 this month. We just pick a random member and try to, just bless and give back. But it takes a lot of time and money. And I have a producer and an editor and all the stuff that goes along with this. So this just helps us keep going and do this. So if you're interested in joining our membership, then please do follow that link too. But without anything else to say, I love you, Steve. I love you back, Steve and Carol, and all you guys who are giving the beautiful comments. I thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today, and really, really appreciate the questions and the comments and the synergy here. And Marti, you're amazing. I just bless you and love you. And I'm going to be on your podcast.
I know, like,
too.
yes.
And so I'm excited to be on your show as well. And we'll just see where all this goes. But that's it for today. You guys, will see you next week. Dr. Lucky will be talking about medicine, energy medicine. This is going to be such a good one. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, so this is a biggie. Stay tuned every Thursday at noon. But next week we'll have him on. And that's it for today. Love you guys so much.
See ya.
Bye.